If you're new to my YouTube channel, please click that subscribe button and remember to click the bell icon to get notifications of all my uploads throughout the week. So for my IndigoBlu project for today, I'm going to be playing on this 8x8 inch flat canvas, and I'm going to be using a plethora of IndigoBlu products. Namely, I'm going to be using some of the Luscious Powders today. So I've got teal, silver, blue and lawn, which is a really nice kind of lightish green. So those are my colour palette for today's project. I'm also going to be using some of the fine modelling paste from IndigoBlu. I've also got some white gesso and some pantry white acrylic paint, all from IndigoBlu. And I'm also going to be using the laurel leaf stamp, which I've already masked off because I want just these bits here. Now, yes, my stencil is kind of grungy. That's because it's well loved and well used. And the stamp sets that I'm going to be using today, I'm going to be using the mini ones from the collector's edition, and I'm going to be using number 12, the Seahorse, number 1, the Bubbles, and number 11, the Compass. So those are the three kind of nautical themed, watery themed ones that I'm going to be using in this canvas today. So I'm going to be using the laurel leaf stencil, which I've already pre-masked off, as you can see, just there, to create some kind of seaweedy kind of effect. So I'm going to grab that modelling paste and just grab a little bit of that paste, drop it onto, to create a bit more room to play with, onto my craft mat here. Looks like there's a lump in that, we don't want that, and I'm just going to drag that through the canvas, or through the stencil. Like so, which is going to give me those lovely kind of seaweedy kind of shapes. Missing a bit down at the bottom. It's only going to be very, very thin and light. I'm not going too heavy with it. A little bit of texture on top isn't going to do it any harm. And then I'm going to just peel that off. As you can see, we've now got some nice little seaweedy kind of effects there. I'm going to grab my heat gun, dry that, because I want to do a little bit more down here at the bottom, but I don't want to mess that up. So I'm going to dry that off and then I'll be right back. And now that modelling paste is dry, I can do the same thing again over here, just with these two nice little designs just down there. And then we can peel that off and repeat that drying process again. I did wash the stencil, you may have noticed, in between applications. I've got a little bit of unwanted stuff there, so I'm just going to wipe that off with my finger. And then, once again, bring in that heat gun and let's get it dry before we move on to the next step. So they're all now nice and dry. You can see they're all nicely dried in that corner. So we have a little bit of texture on our canvas now. So I'm just going to add a thin layer of gesso over the entire of the canvas because I want to add some colour that I want to have a lot of movement with. So I'm just going to paint over the whole canvas, just adding in, trying to cover as much, make sure I don't miss any bits. So this may take a few minutes, so I will just start off and then I'll jump to the end where I've finished it. So my gesso is now dry completely, I have a laminated paper plate and a little pot of water, plus I have my lawn green Luscious pigment powders. They're very, very luscious indeed. I'm just going to add a little bit of water onto my brush end, then I'm going to dip into the pot. And that's going to collect some of those powders just on the end, and then with that water, just dip in lightly, I'm going to activate the pigment and create a beautiful metallic-y kind of watercolour paint that I'm going to add onto the canvas. And if I don't think I've got enough, or it's not deep enough, I'm just going to add some more of that pigment powder onto the paper plate. And as you can see, it kind of creates a paste. And the more pigment powder you add, the thicker it gets. And we get a lovely kind of darker shade. And then add a little bit more. Rather than potting or putting your brush into the water all the time, you can, if you want to, just use a little bit of a spritz bottle. Got a lovely kind of sheen to it. I'm going in all different directions to make sure I get right into those nooks and crannies. And then just grab a little bit of water and then just add that and drag it down. And that colour down at the bottom. Okay, so I'm happy with that to start off with. So I'm just going to rinse off that brush, like so, and then close up that green, grab a piece of kitchen towel, and I'm just going to wipe that off. More difficult if your paint wasn't laminated, but you work with what you have. Right, I'm just going to give that a quick blast and get this dry. It won't take very long, so I'll be right back. Okay, so literally that only took a few seconds to dry. Now I'm going to grab the teal blue now, and I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. In fact, I'm going to just tip actually some of that pigment powder onto the plate, and you'll be able to see just exactly how it reacts. And I'm going to squeeze in some water and grab a brush and literally just mix it up onto the plate. Just collecting all of that powder, and you can see the mica in it. It's all beautifully, beautifully shiny. Now, because these pigment powders are water reactive, when I start to paint the blue on, that green underneath will also react, and it will help the blend. And if it's a little bit too striking like we've got down there, then that's fine, because we can just go over and blend with the brush. And then keep adding until we're happy with the colours. And I want that a little bit deeper, so I'm just going to add a little bit more of that pigment powder. Oop, perhaps a tad too much there. So I'll just pick some up on the brush and then just mix it with that existing water. And then there we go. And I'm working across the canvas, because if I get lines in it, that's fine. It just gives you the impression of kind of water, ripples through water, which is exactly what I want. Just do the edges, got the top. Just add a little bit of colour on there. And then just keep working it until I'm happy with that kind of colour blend. So we've got a nice kind of blue going into that green. Happy with that. Just clean off the brush. And I'm going to give it a quick blast with the heat gun. So that's all dry, and you can see we've got a real nice kind of shiny lustre onto that canvas. So all that lovely luscious powder has gone very, very beautifully shiny indeed. So I want to just create a little bit of a darker tone at the top. So I'm going to bring in that other blue that I have. I'm going to just add a little bit, again, just to the top, on the other side of my plate. I don't want a lot, because it's just going to be a subtle tone. And then add a touch of water into it, and then grab the brush and just mix that powder together. It doesn't really make any difference if we're just mixing a little bit of that other blue tone either. It'll all just be absorbed, and then I can just add a couple of brush strokes into that blue towards the top, and just let that kind of blend. Just round the edges a little bit. Just kind of subtle. Let it settle onto the canvas. And then just lightly brush. And if it's a little bit too strong, just get a little bit of kitchen roll and then just dab, and that will just remove it in a kind of mottled pattern, and that'll help to blend the colours. Cool, happy with that. So again, I'm going to get that dried off and I'll be right back. So my next step is to add some texture into the background. Now for that I'm going to be using the Collector's Edition #1 stamp from IndigoBlu called Bubbles. And this is it. It's only a tiny little stamp. And I'm going to grab a stamp block. I forgot to take one out. There we go. So a stamp block, and just drop it down randomly wherever. Actually, let's do it so it's kind of like so. Those nice bubbles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Pantry White paint, So Pantry White Indigo Blue paint, and I'm going to grab some onto my palette knife, and then I'm going to load up a piece of Indigo Blue Fat Foam. This is the same foam you'd use for your gilding flakes. And I'm just going to load that sponge up, and I'm going to create a kind of paint ink pad using the fat foam. Now this is similar stuff to the cut and dry, so you could probably do it with that if you have it. And then I'm going to just add some of the paint to that stamp, and then I'm going to begin adding in some very subtle bubbles, as you can see, into the background texture. Now, each time I stamp, I'll have to reapply the paint. There you go. And as I said before, it is just background texture, so it doesn't need to be really stark white. And I'm overlapping in places. Very, very subtle in places. You can see it there, look. And because it's shiny, got a shiny background, it's quite difficult to show you it, but you can see when I just tilt that it is stamping. If you wanted a really, really strong effect, then you could always use Versamark and white embossing powder. But I kind of like that subtle effect that you get just in the background. It's kind of magical. Like I said, it is just a background texture. It's not meant to be super strong. You can just see it. Bubbles in the background. Okay, now the thing with using paint on your stamps is that you do have to make sure that you clean them off with lukewarm water very, very quickly. Otherwise, if the paint dries on there, you'll have a devil of a job trying to get it off. So I'm going to whip into the bathroom and just quickly wash the paint off, and then I'll be right back. So my stamp is now clean again, and as you can see, that those white bubbles in the background just add a little bit of very, very subtle texture. Now I also want some stronger ones that are going to come a little bit more to the foreground. So to do that, I'm going to use my Cobalt archival ink. And I'm just going to ink up the stamp, and again I'm just going to randomly, again it's a canvas, so I'm not going to get a perfectly even impression with this. I'm just going to do 2 or 3. I can turn that one around so we get a random pattern. So just add that into the background, and another one towards the top. Just twist it slightly. And then if you wanted to, you could just add some just subtle ones going off the canvas. Maybe just very, very light touches, just to fill in a little bit. So we've got some nice kind of bubbles in the background there. Okay, so I can put that stamp to one side. And I'm going to give this a blast just to get the archival ink to get it dry. and then I'll be right back. Okay, so the next thing I want to add into that background is I want to add some white splashes, so some kind of bubbly splashes. So I'm going to take just a touch of white gesso, add a little bit of water, and then I've got my fan brush. So just grab a little bit more of that paint, just make it a little bit thicker. And then we can start to add splashes all over the background. Yeah, just what I wanted. So again, I'll get that dried off, I'll get this mess cleared up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've put the canvas to one side for a second. Actually, let me just bring it back in to show you. There you go, you've got those lovely kind of white splatters in the background, all adding some nice texture in there. And then when you tilt it the other way, you've got all that lovely kind of shine and shimmer, which is just magic. So, next step, I have a sheet of stamping card from IndigoBlu, white stamping card from IndigoBlu, and I've taken out my coral Luscious pigment powders. So I'm going to add some of that onto my paper plate, add some water, not a huge amount, and then I'm going to mix in all that pigment powder to create a really nice, beautiful colour. You can see the mica just floating on the surface. It's lovely. Okay, so I'm going to paint I'm just going to keep on painting and building up the depth of the colour until it's all gone. Okay, I'm dry that off. Okay, so my coral colour is now dry. Now, the problem with working with a medium that's got a lot of mica and shimmer to it is that you can't really see the proper colour, because every time you turn it into the light, you just get that light reflection from all the mica and the shine. Now, you can see how much of the shine there is in that luscious coral. You can't really see the colour that it actually is, which is, you know, that kind of lovely corally colour. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. Right, okay, so the next step, I'm going to be using the Seahorse number 12 Collector's Edition stamp, which I've mounted onto a block, and I'm going to stamp 3 of these using jet black archival ink, because it's permanent. I don't want anything to react with that luscious powder, so any water-based inks would react, which we don't want. So I'm going to turn that over and just stamp down there. A little bit of pressure on it. Cool. And then I'll do that another 2 times. My ink pad may not be as juicy as it should be, but you can see that lovely seahorse. And the third one, there we go. Now I'm not bothered about these little legs in there because I'm now going to fussy cut them out. So I'll get them dry first of all, and then I'm going to cut them out with a pair of scissors by hand, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and as you can see, I've fussy cut out my 3 little seahorses. So all I need to do now is to glue them down onto my canvas, and to do that I'm just going to use some bog standard kind of glue. This is the Mono Aqua Liquid Gel Glue with a fine applicator nozzle, so that should stick those down. And I may have to just put something down over the top just to hold those, because the paper has got a tendency to curl a little bit. Like so. So I don't need a lot, just a thin bead just around the edges should do it. Stick it down like so. Doesn't need to be held down for long. And then the final bit, just into the nose and then around the body. I think we've got it. We gently pat it down, just hold it down for a minute or two. Okay, so now we've got our seahorses stuck down. I'm going to just let them sit and grab for a little while and put something on each one, something a bit heavy, just to hold it down. Give it a couple of minutes and then I'll be back. So my seahorses are now stuck down quite nicely, but I just want to finish off by adding in a few little highlights. So I've got these self-adhesive pearls. I'm just going to add in as a few. Let's see if they'll come off the, I don't know where that one disappeared off to. Oh, there it is. Just add in some pearls, just as kind of like pearly bubbly accents. Now the adhesive on these is quite strong. Oop, that one definitely wanted to fly away, and then more there. Just add a few. Come on. So there we go. I think I'm going to finish that there. I may actually go around the edge. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm probably going to spoil it, or what you think is probably spoiling it, but I'm going to just get a little bit of brown archival ink, not archival, yeah, archival ink, potting soil. I'm just going to very, very gently just add a little frame all the way around there. Just to kind of finish that off. I think that's just what it needed. Yeah, just a nice kind of subtle darker frame all the way around, and I'm happy with the shimmer and the shine with that. So I'm going to call this little Seahorse canvas complete. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of my angels, without whose generosity and support these videos would not be possible. Thank you.